If you're looking to jump into some NBA best balls this year, now's the time to do it. Go do that over at Draftkings. I'm Nick Whalen. He's Alex Barutha. I'm going to give you some players we're staying away from in Draftkings best ball this season. We'll give you some guards, some forwards, a couple centers as well. Alex, you can lead us off at the guard spot. Who's a little overvalued this season?
I think Jalen Brunson for the New York Knicks, ADP around 22. Look, I think Mike Brown is going to run an offense that's a little more balanced this year. At the very least, I think he might pull back Brunson's minutes. Ultimately, I think you're drafting Brunson at his ceiling if you're drafting him at pick 20, let's say. And I'm looking for a little more upside at that ADP from that spot.
I'm going with LaMelo Ball, Alex, and this is kind of the reverse case because we know about the upside. We know what the production can look like when he's healthy. But man, the missed games, they're devastating. And you're often still paying a second round price in best ball for LaMelo Ball. I don't know that he's been discounted enough for just how much time he's missed over these last few years. 35, 60, 46 missed games in the last 3 seasons. Those ankle, foot issues kind of seem to be connected, seem to be recurring. Look, I love watching LaMelo Ball play. I hope I'm totally wrong on this and he goes out and plays like 78 games this year. But history strongly suggests that if you're paying the price for LaMelo Ball, you regret it. I know in theory, in best ball, you could stomach those injuries more than you can in season-long fantasy, but he's just missed so much time that it's a killer, especially if you're spending that second-round pick on him. So I am not going down the LaMelo Ball road once again this season. Who else is on your list?
Desmond Bane for the Orlando Magic, ADP around 45. I think he'll still have a solid year. I don't think he has much upside in this Orlando team, though, that is going to be run by Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. And Orlando even has 2 floor generals at point guard with Jalen Suggs and Tyus Jones. So I think Bane is going to be doing a lot of spot-up three-point shooting, which will be fine. But I think there's just far less upside to be had this year than in years past.
I'm going to go with Zach LaVine. You're not paying a crazy high price for LaVine, but I don't really love how things looked for him when he went from Chicago to Sacramento last season. He is a guy that does tend to run hot and cold. He'll have 3 great games and 3 terrible games, which in theory is better for best ball. But, when he arrived in Sacramento, despite seeing more minutes, 3 more minutes per game on a nightly basis, his scoring dipped, his rebounding dipped, his assist numbers went down. He was basically a 22, 4 and 3 guy on a nightly basis. Doesn't give you anything defensively. And he's also a player that despite, taking a lot of difficult shots, a lot of threes, he's been shooting around 50% from the field over these last few years. And you're not getting that benefit in a best ball league. You got to pay a pick 50 to 55 price on Zach LaVine. To me, I would rather take a shot on someone like Kobe White, who has basically the same ADP and to me, quite a bit more upside.
Around that same spot, I am not drafting Dyson Daniels for the Atlanta Hawks.
Interesting.
Something important to note, in the DraftKings best ball format, steals and blocks are worth 2.
Yep.
And some points leagues are worth 3. So I think Daniels might be a little overvalued. And look, this Atlanta Hawks team, they loaded up in the offseason. They added Porzingis. They added some depth at Dyson Daniels' position with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard. And Jalen Johnson's going to be healthy. Daniels did a lot of his damage last season when Johnson was out. Maybe Zachary Risochet takes a step forward. I just think there's just more downside risk this year with Dyson Daniels than upside risk.
All right, Alex, let's move over to the forward position. I know you have a few names. I got a couple of guys I'm staying away from. Where do you want to go first?
Going with RJ Barrett on the Toronto Raptors, someone who is a great points league player, but I think in this new look Toronto team, the offense is mostly going to be run through Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Emmanuel Quickley. I'm a little bit worried that RJ Barrett's going to kind of end up in the corner on a lot of offensive possessions and just not going to have these sort of explosive, 25.7 assist games that he was having at points last year.
I like that one. I think he's a little bit overvalued coming off of, what was a kind of disastrous season for Toronto injury-wise. I'm going to what I consider just a free space here. I'm shocked that you didn't start with Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. I'm just not doing it. I'm not dealing with Markkanen. I'm not dealing with the Utah Jazz. And, look, we could quibble about him resting down the stretch, the injuries, but beyond that, the Utah Jazz have just turned him into a points, rebounds only guy. Like, that's it. He doesn't get assists. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't get steals. He really does nothing for you defensively. My hope if you do invest in Lauri Markkanen is that he's eventually traded into a better basketball situation because I think he's a better player than what has happened in Utah over these last couple of years. But I'm not really interested in Markkanen, even in this format where he dropped off a ton in terms of field goal percentage last season, was shooting around 40% from the field. I know that doesn't kill you in best ball, but it's just depressing what the stat profile has turned into. And I ultimately worry how reliable he's going to be in terms of the games played as long as he's on that Jazz roster. All right, Alex, tell me why you are out on Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, most of Bridges' value comes from his ability to not miss time, which is fine. But in a best ball format, I want someone with a little more juice. I want someone with like greater per minute stats. And Mikal Bridges last year, hovers around like the high 20s in fantasy points per game, but he played 37 minutes. Is he going to play 37 minutes a game this year? So around ADP 82, I want guys with all upside value. I already have my starters in place for the most part by this point in the draft. So I'm not as worried about availability or anything like that.
Yeah, keeping with that theme, a guy who to me just doesn't have a ton of upside, and you have to pay a little bit of a higher price. We're talking round 5 for Jimmy Butler, now of the Golden State Warriors. A big part of the appeal with Jimmy Butler in category league fantasy is the field goal percentage. He's always hanging around 50%. He's a high usage player. But we did see the numbers overall take a dip last season, kind of had that tumultuous start in Miami and, helped the Warriors win games, but was putting up worse numbers once he arrived in Golden State. We saw his minutes start to decline as well. This is a guy who's in his mid-30s. He's 35 years old. He hasn't played 65 games in almost a decade. You could basically pencil him in now for 15 to 20 missed games every year. And also a guy who's really difficult to trust in the regular season. Like Jimmy Butler has built his brand on, I'm the playoff guy. I might loaf it through the regular season, but when it counts, I'm going to show up. We're not worried about the postseason here in the Draftkings best ball contest. So Jimmy Butler, not really somebody I'm all that interested in best ball in any fantasy league due to, some of the issues he's had being consistent in the regular season. Let's do one more forward here, Alex. Tobias Harris is your guy.
Yeah, at ADP 126. And there'll probably be some people, who say, well, can someone be a bust with the ADP that low? In a best ball format, I think so, because you are shooting for upside, right? I mean, my floor at this point is not my concern when I'm drafting for my theoretical bench. And Tobias Harris, he had a down year last year, and I don't see why he would get better. I mean, obviously, the Pistons are bringing back Cade Cunningham. Jaden Ivey is going to be healthy. Asar Thompson is going to play a bigger role in the offense. They added Karis LeVert. There are some other guys on the team that I think will take steps forward offensively. And I think Tobias Harris is just going to end up being kind of invisible some nights.
Sounds like he's going to end up being Tobias Harris to me. Yeah. I like that case quite a bit. Start taking some shots when you get beyond pick 100. Let's finish out with a couple of centers, Alex. Tell me if you are in or out on Domin Ayton. Got to pay a top 50 price in DraftKings.
I am out on Domin Ayton at an ADP inside the top 50. Yeah, look, the thing about Ayton is I think he can have a solid year with the LA Lakers, but it's not one that I think he will do a lot of volume scoring. I think the efficiency is really going to be what comes through for Ayton, like it did when he was in Phoenix and he had other players feeding him the ball. And I also worry a little bit about the rebounding because Luka and LeBron are both great rebounders for their position. Guys like Hachimura and Vanderbilt are there as well. So I think there is some downside risk with Ayton compared to past years.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I had trouble coming up with these, true bust centers for best ball. I like most of these guys. But I did settle on Nikola Vucevic, and it pains me to say it because he's been so consistent, but he is 35 years old now. You do wonder if some regression is going to hit. He hasn't missed many games. He gives you 18 and 10 every night, gives you a few assists, should be in a good spot, you would think, to start the year. What concerns me a little bit with Vucevic is, and we've been talking about this for years, but he is finally in the final year of his contract. And you do wonder, will the Bulls finally recognize where they are and pull the plug on at least some parts of this core? Like Nikola Vucevic is not the future of the Chicago Bulls. I'm sorry to say it. He's 35 years old. I don't know who the future is, but it's not him. My worry is that if he's traded mid-season, it would be almost certainly to a worse situation. I don't know if there's another team out there that's lining up to hand Nikola Vucevic 34 minutes per game and say, hey, you're our second option. So I know that's kind of a roundabout way or a roundabout reason to fade someone, but that is a real concern for me now that he is in the final year of that deal.
Yeah, and every year he gets older, the injury risk increases, right, even though he's been relatively durable lately. What my last center that I will consider overrated at his ADP, which is in the mid rounds, is Jared Allen of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who has seen his minutes decrease and his usage decrease across the past 2 seasons, has not been as great as a rebounder or a shot blocker. And maybe there's a little, he gets a bump early in the season while Darius Garland is out, Max Strus is out. There's some touches available. But I also think the future of this team is Evan Mobley at center. And this team has some solid wing depth as well. They can play Mobley at center and still have a quality lineup on the wing. So I just don't think there's any upside value for Jared Allen anymore, who I would prefer to have as my second center in a best ball situation if I had him at all.
I'll finish out with Onyeka Okongwu, Alex, a player who I love to see the development from him last season, but he's going around pick 60 right now in DraftKings Best Ball. And look, I'm high on Kristaps Porzingis this season. I love that addition for the Atlanta Hawks. And if the Hawks are healthy, including Porzingis, that likely means Onyeka Okongwu is coming off the bench. I think we could see a regression in terms of the minutes that he picked up last season. I mean, it's a guy who has a really nice, diverse stat profile. Could be a 2.5 blocks plus steals guy when the minutes are there, but I worry about the minutes being there. And if I'm optimistic on Porzingis, I think by default, I have to be a little bit less optimistic on Onyeka Okongwu. Someone I would love to have on my roster. If I could get him at like pick 90, great. He's kind of a nice fill-in option, if you will, but paying a top 60 price for a guy who is likely coming off the bench whenever Porzingis is healthy, whenever Jalen Johnson is healthy, that to me is a little bit too rich.
I'm with you on that. I worry about it a little bit. I think Porzingis is the better play in a best ball situation.
First, here's a quick message from our friends over at DraftKings.
Listen up. Our partners at DraftKings Pick 6 have a deal you don't want to miss. New DraftKings customers, this one's for you. When you play $5 or more on your first paid Pick 6 entry, you get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right. Play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just tap on the link in the description below to sign up and start playing. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use that link to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 8887-897777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable. Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Ends November 3rd, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. See full terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.